Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Wrestling Classic, Justin here, and we are back for casual conversations with the Classic. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. You know, we took a lengthy hiatus after everything that happened in 2020. It was just a crazy year. So many things happened that I had to take a break from doing this interview show. For those of you who kept tuning into the TWC show, I really appreciate it. For those of you that follow TWC worldwide during that period of time, I really appreciate it. And the show must go on. I will say this about the casual conversations, though. I don't know if this is going to be a once a week. We're going to drop an interview for the casual conversations because shout out to guys and girls like Chris Van Vliet and Alicia Atude. Obviously, I know they're killing it now and they got a reputation. But when you're starting to do this interview thing, when you start trying to collect interviews and reach out to people for interviews and stuff, like it's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to get the timing right with that person. Sometimes you get someone to confirm and say they're down, and then the next thing you know, they something comes up last minute, or they say yeah, and then they disappear, or they just leave you on scene. So I'm going to try to keep getting interviews. I'm going to keep trying to bring you guys some more casual conversations. I just want to give you guys a message before this interview with Renee Paquette to give you kind of a, welcome back to the casual conversations. I'll try to keep doing this. This is kind of like a season 2. If you guys haven't watched the old casual conversations, go check them out. And moving forward, we'll try to do more. Anytime I can secure an interview and make sure it actually happens, I will do that. I've reached out to a handful of people already. Like I said, this interviewing game is a lot more difficult than it seems if you see other people do it. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoy this interview. I hope to bring you guys some more. Obviously, guys, if you're on YouTube right now, you guys can watch it on YouTube and comment and like and share and all of that. But if you're more of an audio person, I do share the casual conversation interviews on the TWC show feed. So if you already subscribe to the TWC show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else, you also get these interviews. Hopefully I can keep doing them. Hopefully we get some great conversations going. For me, this was never about trying to get like a interview with a lot of questions and get the headline and the buzz. I just wanted to talk to people and have conversations with them. I wanted to sound like just personal conversations I'd have with someone if we went into a sandwich shop or if we were just hanging out in a coffee shop and grabbing dinner and then letting you guys in to listen to those conversations. That's how I treat these casual conversations, hence the name. I feel like I've said it so many times, but hopefully you guys enjoy this interview. I'll be recording more in the future, and stay tuned, guys. Keep doing the thing. Now let's get to interviewer, host, broadcaster, cookbook author, podcaster, none other than one of my favorites for a very long time, someone I've been watching and following for years now, former WWE personality, and who knows what the future has to hold for everybody. Check out my interview with Renee Paquette. Keep doing the thing. Ooh, yeah. Subscribe. And we're back for another casual conversation with the Classic, and I am here with none other than host, interviewer, broadcaster, podcaster, cookbook author, Renee Paquette. How are you doing today?
Good. Yeah,
I'm glad.
rattling off. I mean, I got a lot of shit going on. Busy.
You do a lot of things, and you've done a lot of things, and we'll talk about a lot of that today. I really appreciate you coming on here. It means a lot. I've been wanting to talk to you for a really long time. Obviously, I've followed you since way back in the day, but we've gotten to talk a few times here and there, just in DMs and stuff. But to finally actually get to have a face-to-face confrontation and have to talk like this is pretty cool.
I know. How nice. Yeah. I mean, the pandemic's been weird on a lot of people, but it's nice to just be able to hop on and be able to do some Zoom calls, or we're on right now to be able to hop on and be able to talk and still make some content.
It's crazy how popular like this style of interviewing got over this pandemic. Like everyone's on Zoom call interviews and these virtual interviews, and I think it's like, I love how everybody got so creative in a time where everybody could have just stopped doing anything, and everyone's like, no, we're gonna find ways to continue doing stuff,
It's cool. It's like, it's made people like think outside the box in certain senses, but it's also really scaled things back. It's made things so basic. And I think like there's something really nice about that, because that's the kind of content that I really like to be a part of. Is like, I love the no bells and whistles and
Yeah.
just like having a good conversation, having interesting people, and trying to make something of that where it's like no one's expecting like full hair and makeup. We're on a big shiny set. Like
The
I
full
think it's really
production.
cool to have everything so stripped back and so natural and bare. There's something really interesting about that, I think.
And it actually makes things a little bit easier because I know you've mentioned it about yourself sometimes, but I can be the same way where sometimes it's hard to take that first leap of faith because I expect things to be so perfect. And I'm like,
Yeah.
unless everything's right, I don't want to even start it. But this made people be like, okay, well, let's just start it and see what happens now.
Yeah, I mean, that's really my mindset is like, you're never going to have the perfect opportunity. Not everything's always going to be lined up exactly the way that you want it to be lined up. So just start and figure stuff out, make changes as you're going and reevaluate things and develop things. And it's all good. I feel like we all end up putting so much pressure on ourselves to like be perfect and have like the best version of whatever this
Yeah.
other thing is. And it's like, there's
Or
just so much stuff out
or
there.
people will look at people's finished products and they'll think that's what it's supposed to be like right off the bat.
Yeah.
But I remember I was talking to a friend of mine. He's like, honestly, he's like, go back and watch the first episode of Joe Rogan's podcast.
My husband made me do the same thing.
Yeah.
He did the exact same thing to me.
And they're just two dudes sitting on a couch. The camera
Yeah.
was horrible, and they're just talking. I'm like, oh, and I'm like, it's just because he started, and progressively it got better, and
Totally.
better. And then you look at what episode he's on. You're like, oh, he just stayed consistent, and it
But
got
also,
bigger and
it's
bigger.
consistency and like as much as like, okay, if you want to like invest and buy like the best mic and the best camera and get all that shit, cool. But at the end of the day, people are either going to connect with you or they're not. So whether
Yeah.
you're just sitting on a couch on your MacBook or on your phone, however you're doing it, people are they're either going to get it or not. And you can like invest in yourself as like your own business in the sense of, getting some of that equipment, trying to make the sound quality as good as possible and the video quality as good as possible. But yeah, end of the day, I think people like who they like and what they like, regardless of how fancy it is or whatever.
100%. I do want to congratulate you on a couple of things first before we move on and talking about everything else. First things first, of course, like you and Jon are expecting a baby. You announced it on national television. That's super cool. Like a big congratulations to that. Were you shocked when he announced it on television? Did you know that was coming or?
I did know that it was coming. I mean, we were so close at that point of being
Yeah.
like, hey, I guess like we're gonna have to tell people soon that I'm pregnant. And then just sort of figuring out like what are we going to do, like an Instagram post or like by we I mean me, obviously.
Yeah.
We give a shit about being on social media. Also he doesn't have to hide a baby bump. I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, once he was like out in Jacksonville and we had been talking about it and he texted me, he's like, can I just say it tonight? And I was like, yeah, sure. You know what? Fuck it. Do it.
It was so slick.
The way he just like said, and it wasn't a promo about me being pregnant. He just kind of tossed it out there and then got back to his promo. It was really the best way to do it. It took all the pressure off of me to have to do it. I mean, my phone was blowing up afterwards, being like, hold on. Did I just hear that right? But yeah, it was great. It was so much easier for me. And I had just gotten back from having some ultrasounds and meeting with my OBGYN and everything looked good. So I'm like, hell yeah, let the people know.
Has it hit you guys yet? Do you guys feel like parents yet? Or because I have a lot of friends that are starting to have babies now, and I know it hits them one day, you know?
It's weird. I feel like the more we talk about it, I feel for the dudes.
Yeah.
Because I have the baby growing in me. My body's changing. I can feel her kicking. I have all these differences already. So I can already have this connection with this baby, where for like dudes, you don't get those things. And he can't feel her kick just yet. I've only felt her kick like with my hand on my belly once, just like a few days ago. Because I'm 21 weeks.
Yeah.
So I can like feel her moving around, but he's not been able to feel her yet. I think that will be a big moment for him for sure. But no, I think there's certain things that come up that were like, oh yeah, like God, I guess we'll have to like cross that bridge at some point. Like we were talking, like even doing like a road trip. Like, God, how do you do a road trip with a kid? Like we were trying with my cousin just went from Los Angeles up to British Columbia.
Yeah.
And then BC back to LA. I mean, over a while, but I was like, God, how do they do that with like kids in the car and dogs in the car? Like, what are the incentives you give them to like, just please let us get through this trip? So certain things come up like that, or like certain rules that you'll want to like put into play for kids, or the state of the world these days. So, and we have conversations like that, but also we're the first to admit that we have not a clue what we're doing. So we're just kind of rolling with the punches.
I think that's normal, though. I
Yeah, of
think,
course.
I've seen it happen to people. I mean, for example, as I know, you're a big fan of This Is Us. Like, he'll have his Jack Pearson moment when he probably sees that child.
So I think Jon is for sure going to be like a Jack Pearson because he is so like, he's just so like the epicenter of even like our family, which is just him and I and our dogs right now. And even just like, I mean, with like the rest of our family and everything as well. He's just so like beloved amongst our families. And I'm like, shit, now we're going to have this little girl who's also going to be obsessed with you. I'm going in the back of the line.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like he is going to like really settle into like that dad mode. He's
100%.
He's so much more, he's got so much more patience than I do. He's much calmer than I am. So I'm going to I need to like take a page out of his book. I need to like pick up on some of like his vibes.
You already see the good dad in him. That's
oh my
perfect.
God.
That's what you want to see, right?
Honestly, because you know what? I mean, not that we had, we wanted to have kids, but you think about it sometimes and, I was never that girl that was like, I can't wait to have kids. I need to have kids. Like, I just didn't really have that feeling until, a little bit later into my 30s. And once it started to hit, and it's because of him, I was like, man, like, we have such a great relationship. And he's like he's just great. He's fucking great. So I was like, man, if there's ever someone to like procreate and have kids with, it's this dude. Like, he's just the best.
Have you guys thought of names yet? Have you guys thought of names yet? Has it happened?
We do, yeah. We're keeping the name a secret, but we do have the name hammered down.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
the second thing
down pretty early. We like had a couple that we were kind of tossing around a little bit, but but we were debating until we knew if it was a boy or girl, and then once it was a girl, we had already kind of hammered it down. So.
Is it one? You don't need to. Obviously, you want to keep the name a secret, but is it like one of those new names, or is it something that's like
No, it's more classic.
Okay, fair enough. The second thing I want to congratulate you on is you just became an official American citizen. Like, congratulations on that.
Yet. I'm
almost
there.
Almost
the
there.
The whole process is crazy.
Trust me, I've looked into it. I've wanted to move down there a ton of times doing this whole entire thing I've been doing.
It is so much work. It's so hard. Like,
I know.
And the way I've been with it is like, I mean, even just like from when I left from like Toronto, it's like I went from Toronto, moved down to the US. I was on an entertainer's visa. And then I did that for however many years. Then I switched and got my green card. Then Jon and I get married. So now I can become a citizen through marriage because it's 3 years as opposed to 5 years. I've had to have my green card for 5 years as opposed to marriage for 3 years. So we've been married for 4 years coming up. But anyway, so I did my test the other day, passed it. Thank God.
Yeah.
I was so nervous, so stressed out. I kept getting like those like butterflies of like, oh my God, it's like coming up soon. I kept knowing that it was like looming. So I went in and did my test. I was missing a few documents. So I sent those in. Those got there yesterday. So I think the last thing I have to do is like my oath.
Okay.
Pending that everything goes okay. I mean, I think everything when I had my interview and my test the other day, everything was really good. But yeah, I have to then just do my oath and then I'm good to go.
It's crazy to think because it's like for like just an outsider looking at it, it's like you've been down there for so long. I would have just assumed you already were a citizen or something.
No,
like
and I'm doing it as fast as I can. Like I'm doing everything like almost to the date. Because some people drag their feet because it is a lot of work. It's just like it's such a pain to do, and it's a lot of paperwork. It can be a lot of money. It's a lot of meetings and all this stuff where like I just hate dealing with that stuff so much that I just want to get it done with.
No, 100%.
I just want to deal with it. Especially like after I got my green card, I was like, oh, okay, cool. It feels like more permanent.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, well, I'm already here and my husband's American. I'm gonna have an American kid now.
Yeah.
Might as well jump on the bandwagon.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask now that I'm curious. Is there any, like, if you could give me 3 things you miss about Canada though? What are 3 things you can say you miss about Canada? Being Canadian myself, I'm out here in Vancouver, right? So,
which is the best.
Thank you.
Just 3 is so hard because I miss Canada so much.
Yeah.
I miss Canada. I love Canada. I'm so like Canada proud.
Yeah.
It's funny how I feel like Canadians are so like that, and I've noticed it now that I don't live there. My like mom and my dad always like comment on my Instagram pictures with like Canadian flags, like as if that means they're just like on everything.
Reminding you
It's so
where you
weird.
come
Yeah, they
from.
like love it. It's so funny. But things that I miss, I mean, definitely like food wise, obviously like the snacks, having I can get all dressed chips in the US, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
but I miss ketchup chips. I miss all like
I
my
still
Cadbury
think that's
stuff.
crazy that they don't have ketchup chips.
I don't get it. There is a brand hers that does them. You
Yeah.
can't get them everywhere though. They're actually not bad. They're pretty decent.
Oh, okay.
Um, but yeah, there's so many different snacks that I miss. But for me, I think it's especially in Toronto, like all the culture that's there. I love like being downtown Toronto and like all the different neighborhoods and the little pockets and like all the different ethnicities that are there. I think it's just, I miss living in a city that is like that. I mean, New York is like that.
Yeah.
So I always got that fix while I lived there. But now that I don't live in a city like that, I do really miss that stuff. I miss, I mean, obviously my family, that goes
Oh, of
without
course. Yeah.
saying. But yeah, snacks, the culture. I think some of like the open space and that like fresh air. I love like as
There
soon as
is
I get up,
something
yes.
about being up here, and there's like mountains and trees just in the
Especially
randomest
when you get off
places.
the plane in Vancouver, you're like,
Yeah.
fill me up. It is just the best.
Especially when I come home here and then I'll like go for a drive and I'm like, oh, like I can drive to the lake and there's trees and there's mountains. And like I spent 6 months
Beautiful.
in California trying to make stuff happen for myself. And a lot of the drives down in California was just like deserty and like, just
I
like empty
know.
land. And I was just
I
like,
wish that I liked the desert more. I'm just not a huge desert person. Like it's
yeah.
fine, but it all just seems it's just like dead.
Yeah, it feels like there's like this air that's breathing when you got all the trees and the mountains and the water. It's a
Totally.
different vibe.
It
But
really is. It
I know
cleanses
you.
your soul.
It does. I don't know. I miss that every time I go away. And the other thing that was really weird about California specifically, because I was down there for so long, that I found was I low key like missed the rain because
Yes.
it's always so sunny there that people were always
I
available to do things. And I'm like,
I
I miss the
know.
rainy days where I could sit at home and do stuff at home and not feel
Me
guilty
too.
about it. And that
It's
was like one of the
even
biggest
worse
things.
in Vegas, I would say, because I mean, I guess they're about the same, but it's the same thing. It's like the Truman Show. Every
Yeah.
day is the same. The sun is out, it's bright, it's sunny, which like some people would be like, yeah, that sounds great. I
Yeah.
love rainy days too. I want like
I
rainy days. I want like a day where you're like forced to do nothing or like just like sit in. And I
100%.
mean, we're all doing that now, anyways, of just like watching Netflix shows and watching movies and ordering
Yeah.
food. I
And you
love
feel
those
less guilty
days.
doing stuff like that when it's
Yes.
raining outside. Because when it's sunny outside, you're like, oh, should I go outside and do something before the sun goes down?
100%.
Like, I don't
Yes.
know. And
I
that's one
love like
thing.
a good like thunderstorm. Getting like a thunderstorm. Actually, it
Yeah.
snowed in Las Vegas this week, which I missed because I'm out in LA.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I miss thunderstorms. It's funny because my dog Blue, he freaks out when there's thunderstorms on TV. He loses his mind. I'm like, oh, it's probably because he never sees them. He doesn't
Yeah.
know what they are.
Yeah. No, 100%.
It's so
It's like
weird.
when people. I was in California and I was talking to one of my uncles down there, and we don't have much to talk about because he's not like my uncle, he's like related distantly, but we were just in the car together, and he's like, so like so how is it when it snows? And I'm like, that's such a weird question to ask somebody. Like,
But have you ever seen someone who's never seen snow?
I feel like he
Seen it for the
hasn't because
first time?
he was like, no, I don't think so. No, like in person.
It's crazy. So I only have once actually, and it was in Las Vegas, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
But this was years ago. We were in Vegas and we were taking the car rental shuttle over to get our rental. And there was a girl on our shuttle from Hawaii and it started to snow and she had never seen it before. So like seeing the look on her face to see like snow coming down was pretty funny.
That's crazy. It's just crazy
Yeah.
to think that people don't see stuff like that because I'm so used to it now.
I know.
I know you're still a big hockey fan.
Yes.
Did you grow up a Toronto Maple Leafs fan?
I did. I grew up as a Leafs fan. So I used to, well, not that I ever really went to Leafs games that often because those tickets are hard to come by. I've been to Leafs games, of course. I used to waitress at Leafs games.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Leafs and Raptors and Toronto Rock lacrosse.
How was that? Was that fun?
It was actually a good gig. It
Okay.
was a good like waitressing gig in the sense
Yeah.
that like at the time I was like auditioning. I was taking like acting classes and all that. So of course I was waitressing and that was like a great spot because you got paid way more per hour and you didn't have to tip out to bartenders at the end. And I would only you waitress in like the lower bowl, which is where like the fancy people sit, and I always tip you really well. So yeah, it was pretty good. It was a good gig.
So are you still a Toronto's fan, or have you converted to being a Golden Knights fan fully?
I've converted.
Have you?
I have, and it makes so many people mad. Like I feel like the Singh brothers always give me so much shit for it.
Of course they would.
But listen, Toronto's let me down for a long time.
I mean, I'm from Vancouver. So,
yeah, exactly. You don't.
Yeah.
You got the Canucks. Yeah. You're good.
I mean, we had 2011. I thought, Yeah,
I mean, you get these runs, and like, especially as a kid, like growing up, I loved watching the Leafs. I mean, I would like remember the roster top to bottom. Like I knew who everybody was, what position they were in. I knew what like the fucking curve of their stick was. I knew everything. That sounds like a euphemism. It's not literally the curve of their stick. And but yeah, so once I moved out to Vegas, I honestly felt so lost because I was like, I don't know what to do in the desert. I don't know what happens out here. And then we got a hockey team, and I was like, hell yeah, that's something I can get into. Totally get behind the team. And then they have the seasons that they've had. It's
that
so
first season was incredible.
Oh my God, it's just fun to root for like a winning team, and there's like this energy. It really made the city feel like it kind of came together. It was really cool. And now we've got an AHL team. I think their season maybe just started this week. I know they started training, but they built a new arena right around the corner from our house. So once the world opens back up and I can start going to some AHL games, because that's what I really love to go to. My dad used to always take me to like Oshawa Generals, who are like an OHL team.
Yeah.
Go to like those games, like the Sudbury Wolves. Like I love going to like more like minor league games.
No,
like
100%.
That. Just like that like hunger behind it. It's so fun. So that's one thing. Having my daughter, like we're going to those games.
Yeah, you can still give her the hockey experience.
Oh hell yeah!
Did you turn Jon into a hockey fan, or is he just not with it?
He's just not a huge sports fan in general.
Fair enough.
He's really not. Like we'll watch it. Like when it's like playoffs and stuff, he'll jump on board with me. But no, he doesn't really care.
I can kind of relate because I was the biggest hockey fan growing up, but it's the only sport I kind of stuck with though. Like I was a big basketball fan of football, but like hockey's the one that stuck around. But I've been so off and on with it because of the Canucks. And I believe there is something about like you really need a team to get behind to continue watching. Otherwise, yeah. Because I was a big Colorado Avalanche fan when I was a kid, and they won the Stanley Cup, and that was like the nicest feeling that like the team I was behind won the cup. Whoa.
Yeah. It's cool. Yeah. It just makes it feel like it's so much more exciting to get behind, of course. I mean, we just have like one of our really close friends. He's from Buffalo, so he was like losing his mind at the Bills going as far as they did, but then like that crushing blow when they lose and don't make it in, it messes you up. It's very heartbreaking. But I did get to be in Toronto when the Raptors won the finals.
Oh, you were there for that?
Randomly happened to be there. I had an appearance, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Got to go out to like a bar with my brother, and we watched the finals, and to like be there when everyone's like raiding the streets, like going up and down King and Queen Street. Like it was wild. It was so cool to like be in Toronto for a moment like that.
That was super special because it's like the one Canadian team. And so it's like they won for the entire country, which was like even here in Vancouver, everyone was just like excited in the bars watching it and stuff. So no, that was definitely cool.
Sorry, Grizzlies.
Yeah, those guys. I remember that. I went to a game when I was a kid. Moving forward though, like for me, like I've obviously been watching you since you've been on The Score. Like that's when I started following you. Renee Paquette on The Score with Arda Ocal and Jimmy Corderas. You guys are doing Aftermath. That's when I became a fan. So when you popped up on WWE, like I was like, oh, that's what? Like that's crazy. Like, but how did Aftermath become a thing? Because I remember it when it started, and it just came out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, this is after post like SmackDown wrestling show that comes on. Like, was that something that you guys had to push for really hard, or how did that work out?
No, they brought it to us.
Okay.
I mean, unless Arda has a different version of that story, which he very well could, because I mean, Arda's such a hustler, and he's always kind of pitching ideas. And truthfully, he was like the wrestling fan, like prior to me jumping on that bandwagon with him. And but I like my recollection of that all coming together was my boss, Greg Sansoni at the Score. He came up to me and was like, hey, we're going to start doing an after show for Monday Night Raw. Do you want to host it? And I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Let me on board. Like, I would love to do that. So the show kind of started from there when it used to be called Right After Wrestling, which we ended up having to nix that name.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it grew into Aftermath. And that was just me like really dipping my toe into like what the wrestling world like really has to offer, what wrestling has to offer. Yeah, it was such a cool experience of like somebody asking me to do something and not realizing how much that was going to completely alter my life.
Yeah, because that was like that opened the doors to everything else that followed
Yeah.
that. But and for those people that don't know, like the Score was one of the biggest sports networks in Canada prior, where all the WWE programming was airing prior to being, merged into
Yeah.
Sportsnet and whatnot. But were you always a wrestling fan? Like, was wrestling like the goal for you? Did you want to get involved with wrestling when you were younger?
So, I mean, yes, I liked wrestling when I was a kid,
Yeah.
but I never would have, it was never on my like vision board of like, I want to go work in wrestling. That was
Yeah.
never, it just wasn't even something that ever even entered my mind. I wanted to, like, I started off doing more like sort of like comedy stuff, like different types of like comedy hosting specifically. Like, I really wanted to be more like Chelsea Handler. I love what Jimmy Fallon does,
Yeah.
like Jimmy Kimmel. Just that whole world was really what I wanted to get into, and that's what ended up getting me to go to the Score, was because they did more like tongue-in-cheek comedic style interviews. They had Cabby
Yeah.
there, they had Gary D.
Cabby,
So
yeah.
so they had those guys there, and I was like, oh cool, like, because I never wanted to be like a sports broadcaster. I didn't want to just be
Yeah.
this straight-laced I can't
Like the
talk right now.
TSN
I
kind
feel
of
like it's like
broadcasters.
pregnancy brain.
That's okay.
But yeah, I never really wanted to be like a true, like, I didn't want to be like on like Sports Center or like behind the desk for TSN. I mean, those are great gigs.
They
but
are,
that
but
just
it's
wasn't
very
what
straight laced. It's very to the
yeah, it
point.
just wasn't what I wanted to do. So when I saw
Yeah.
what the Score was doing, then I was like, oh, so I can do like kind of do like some comedy meet sports interviews, and maybe like I was just figuring out what I wanted to do. I was only like 23, 24 when I started there. So I was really just figuring it all out. But yeah, the idea of getting into wrestling just never entered my brain. I never would have imagined at the time of them asking me to do Aftermath that it would have turned into the insane career that I've been able to have in wrestling. It's crazy how some things just lead to things. It's nuts.
Do you remember like your most favorite interview from that period of being on Aftermath with a wrestler?
We did, when I was doing the show, we
Yeah.
didn't have guests on very often.
Yeah.
So I would say, I mean, I think one of the ones I remember the most was meeting Maurice for the first time.
Okay, yeah.
Because she was in town doing a signing, so I went down and got to like interview her for that. But I would have on, and they didn't come on Aftermath, but when I was doing another show called The Break,
Yeah.
we would be able to get some wrestling guys on there. So I had like Dolph Ziggler on, Zack Ryder, we had Yoshi Tatsu, Evan Bourne. So I got to like work with those guys quite a bit. So I shouldn't say quite a bit, but I did work with them a bit. And yeah, I mean, it was just cool kind of like getting to know those guys, which really helped me once I got into WWE as well. It was nice to know, like, okay, I already know some people here. I'm not like totally new kid on the block.
Yeah. So how did that door open to WWE?
So my contract at the Score was coming up, and there was all this stuff going on with Rogers picking them up and maybe buying that.
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to move to the US. I was ready to go like do whatever my next thing was going to be. And I had gone down. I went to the US like at least once a month. I would either go to LA or I'd go to New York. I'd be taking meetings and auditions and all that stuff. So it was like one thing after another. And then once it really got down to the nitty gritty, and then I was like auditioning at ESPN and then WWE, they were literally about a week apart from each other. And I thought I was going to ESPN. I was like, I guess that's what I'm going to go do. It was like a good audition. Everything felt really great. And then I went to WWE, and again, just days later, and then everything just kind of clicked there. It just made sense. And then they just offered the contract, and I packed up my bags and moved down to New York.
That's insane. I do remember, like, I've posted it plenty of times, that part of the audition that we got to see where you had to sell them on that battery or whatever it was. And I don't know how you thought on your feet that fast. Like, that was insane. Like, I got nervous doing this. I couldn't even imagine doing that.
99% of the time. So I'll just kind of just talk while the red light's on and hope for the best.
I was like, that's fascinating, because we've even gone back and you've seen the one where like they tried to make Eric Bischoff sell like a broom or something and he couldn't do it.
Oh, I've not seen that.
Have you not? Okay, so you can Google it.
Uh-uh.
So Eric Bischoff had an audition with the WWE back in like 89 or 90
Yeah.
or something. And they tried to make him sell a room. And it's not that like he did a good job. But then when I compare it to yours, I'm like, you just came up with something just like
Sorry,
that. Like it kind of
Bischoff.
made sense. I'm like, that's insane.
It's
How was
more
the rest
so
of the interview process?
it's more so funny to me that since like 1989 to like what that would have been like 2012,
Yeah.
y'all didn't change your audition process.
And it
They
was like
still
the
do the same
same
thing.
thing. They just had him standing in front of like a green screen with the fake audience behind him with a
Oh
broom.
my
It was like a
god.
thing, and he got nervous, I think. But I'm like, I
Of
like the way
course,
you nailed it
they
was
put you
perfect.
through the ringer. It's not like, I've auditioned for like a million different things, and it's like you go in, you are either like doing a scene or you're put together doing a show, whatever. Like you know kind of what you're doing. And this was like a combine of like audition where like
Yeah,
I had to go in. It's like I was doing sort of like an aftermath style show, like a studio show idea. They had me do commentary with Matt Stryker, which I
yeah,
really had no idea what I was doing then. I was like, what
yeah.
the? I had no clue. They had me do the selling of like the battery or whatever it was. Just kind of taking me through the towers even and like introducing me to people, meeting some of like the executives there, just kind of like getting a lay of the land of who everyone was, what I was maybe going to be doing. But yeah, it was like full gauntlet style of like just a bunch of different things. They made me like really run through it. It was a long day. Like I remember it being like
Yeah.
a full day of like, hey, now we're gonna go do this, and now we're gonna put you in and try this, and now we're gonna go do that. Like I was exhausted by the end of it,
When
being
you
like, I don't
left,
know what I'm doing. I thought that I botched the whole
oh,
thing
okay. I was
just
gonna
because
ask him
I
like
had
when
no
you left,
clue.
did you think you had it in the bag or?
No, the only time I felt like I had it in the bag was when I was doing like the aftermath style. Because like I
Yeah,
can host a show, no problem, but like I'm not a commentator. I don't know how to do that.
yeah.
I mean, the improv thing was like fun. But they, there was just so many different things, like wearing so many different hats, which ultimately I ended up wearing so many different hats within WWE. But yeah, the only time I felt like truly comfortable was when I was like hosting a show.
No, 100%. And
Yeah.
talking about the commentary stuff, like being on Instagram majority of the time as the Wrestling Classic, like I saw the mixed reaction you got as a commentator, and I always thought it was unfair because I'm like, I'm a wrestling fan, so on behalf of the wrestling fans, sometimes I'm like, why do we talk about stuff we don't know we could do? Like why are
That's the
people
internet, though,
critiquing stuff? And I'm just like, and I remember I went to bat for you because I'm like, yo, I just even recently I was watching an episode of NXT, and I was like, and you were commentating on there, and I remember that.
Yeah.
And I'm like I don't know if it was because it was NXT and it's a little less stressed out and it's a little bit easier. Like you seemed
Just
so
another
comfortable
time.
there, and it
Yeah.
was so good. And I'm like, and so when you were on Raw, and I didn't think you were bad on Raw by no means. Like I thought like you were great. Like I didn't see anything really wrong with it. But I'm like, I can understand there being more pressure and stress there. Was there a big difference when commentating on NXT to on Raw?
Huge
Yeah.
difference. Well, it was also like years in between as well. It's like even when I was doing it at NXT, like I never loved being a commentator. I never really wanted to be a commentator,
Yeah.
but it was an opportunity that was in front of me that I was like, okay, let's try it. Hell yeah. Get away from like some of the scripts, get away like just to like get to talk and talk about wrestling and enjoy that. So like I was into like learning it and figuring it out, but by no means was I like, hell yeah, I want to be Doris Burke. I want to be in there and like call some matches. Like that was never my end goal of being there, but the opportunity came up and I went for it. But working at NXT was cool. I mean, it's different because you're working with Hunter and there's less pressure. You're less under the microscope, especially during those days. I'm not sure if it's the exact same now. I mean, that was a long time ago. That was however many years ago of NXT like getting on TV and new characters coming together. And I loved working with like Tom Phillips, and working with William
Yeah.
Regal was amazing. I love Regal. So it was fun, and I think I got to have a little bit more fun there. But then then you get the call up years later, after having not done it for
Yeah.
years, and they're like, "Hey, we want to put you on Raw." I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's try it."
Yeah.
And there were good days and there was bad days, and there's so much feedback, whether it's from the fans or from the inside, that it's just like it all just got in my head so much. Because I knew I wasn't great at it. I mean, whether someone wants to say I was horrible or someone says that it was fine, I just
Yeah.
knew that it wasn't my strong suit. And that always just kind of ate away at me because I like to be good at what I do. I want to be confident in what I do. And when I know I'm on
100%.
shaky ground, I'm like, fuck, I know. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, I'm doing my best, but I'm out here for 3 hours every week trying to figure it out. And I'm trying to find my proper footing and trying to navigate all of the noise of like, you know, obviously end of the day, you've got to listen to what Vince's opinion is, of course.
Yeah.
But like whether you're, you know, I'd be getting my feedback from him, but then trying to like bounce ideas off of Michael Cole, off of Corey Graves, off of Paul Heyman, whoever
Yeah.
ear I could get to be like, help me, send me a lifeline. I don't know what I'm doing. So I just always felt like I was just like trying to keep my head above water, trying to call some of my husband's matches, which was like a pretty short-lived thing because he left kind of shortly after I was on commentary anyways. But yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. And I don't want to say like it was just tough on me. Like it's just a hard job. It's
Yeah,
a
no,
really
100%.
hard job for anyone that steps in there. And the people that are good at it, like they blow my mind. Like Corey Graves would like piss me off because he's so good at it that I'm like, damn you. How has this just come so natural to you? And he's just like, he's just so smooth in there. And you know, I could come up with a million different reasons of a crutch for myself of like, I've never been in the ring. I couldn't rely on that for, you know, for like, you know, any kind of experience for myself. I had so many different things I could have said, but at the end of the day, it's like just a hard job. And yeah, when I see someone like Corey Graves be so good at it, and Michael Cole is so good at it, I'm like, I want.
That's stress when you're working with two people that were really, really good at it and been doing it for a while. Obviously, Michael Cole's been doing it for years. Like,
totally. And that's the thing. It's like you think you're going in with like the A team, that you're like, okay, I'm with the best of the best. This should be great. But I just felt like I was like fighting for an inch of airspace, you know, like I would just like, how do I get in? I need to like say something too, that I'd always be trying to like jump in, trying to find a good spot to be. And like end of the day as well, they just didn't need a third person in that booth. They're so good as a 2-man booth. And there's just not that much empty space between the two of them that me trying to squeeze in there was just like, it was so difficult. And they're just so great as a duo.
Yeah, we hear them now on SmackDown. It's like, you know, they're killing it. They're doing great.
They're great.
So maybe there's a point to that as well. Like that's true.
They're great at it, but you know, I don't know. Some people are just like Samoa Joe is great at it.
I just was realizing that recently. I was listening to him recently because I was watching back matches for an article I was writing, and I'm like, yo, I don't know why I haven't been paying attention properly, but Samoa Joe's way better than I realized at first.
He's really good. And like some people, I don't know if it's they just like have a knack for it. Like for myself, like I didn't even have in my head whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. I was like, I don't even know what I want to sound like when I'm a commentator. Do I try to be like one of the guys? Do I come at it from a fan perspective? Like I just couldn't quite figure it out because I don't listen to commentary. Like on anything. If I'm watching hockey, I don't hear it. Like I'll be watching with someone and they'll be like, oh, did you hear blah, blah, blah? I'm like, I did not hear any of what, like, I just don't hear it. So I just didn't have it in my head of like what I wanted to sound like or how I wanted to be, where like when I'm hosting a show, I know exactly how I want to be. I know how I'm presented. I know what I'm doing. But there I was just like, somebody send me a stiff cocktail down here because help a sister out.
I mean, there was some gems and all. I will say, like, you guys did have good chemistry as the three of you. It seemed like you guys were naturally genuine friends, which was great. You can tell when there's people commentating, they probably don't have much of a relationship, and it's everyone's trying to get in their own words and stuff. I didn't think it was as bad as some people tried to come out there and say. I almost think I remember like trying to on my page be like, yo guys, like chill, like it's not that easy, like we're acting like we can just go out there and do it. And I think that might have been when you followed the page and I was like, oh, okay, cool. But
maybe I was like,
maybe I'm like, I think so.
You know, I mean, that's just like, first of all, that's just the internet in general. But I will say that was hard for me because prior to that, people had always just been so great to me on the internet for the most part. Of course, there's some shitheads that pop up now and then, but like for the most part, I always kind of like received like a bit of love. So to have people be like, you're the worst, get her off there. I was like, oh my God. I like,
where did these people come from?
I know. What the hell? Where have you guys been this whole time?
I like to ask this question because you know, from people I've been able to talk to in the past or people that worked for the WWE as well, I know how big of a deal it is to a person, just like the self-esteem and anything anyways, to get that first compliment from Vince McMahon. Do you remember the first compliment you got? Like the first time he actually like gave you the feedback that you wanted to hear, where you're like, oh, because it's the word is like he doesn't really give you feedback unless usually it's something bad, but to get like that positive feedback is like.
So I would say on my very first night stepping in to do commentary, when I was like, I really had a fucking attitude because I was like, whatever, they want me to do it, I'll just step in, no skin off my back. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I feel like everyone walked away from my first night doing it, like high-fiving, feeling like, hell yeah, that was really great. I felt good about it, but to like have Vince seem like he was really excited about it. He congratulated me on it. I mean, for him to even like he tweeted about it. Vince never sends out those tweets when I was like, oh my God, what?
That's super cool.
Get that reaction from him was really cool. I wish it stayed that way. But I'll take ownership over that.
You also got to do a bunch of cool stuff on the network throughout the years. Like I do remember watching like your show Unfiltered, and you got to do a bunch of other stuff. Like was there anything you pitched that never got to happen?
Yeah, tons of stuff. I mean, one thing that I've always really wanted to do was to bring back Tuesday Night Titans. So
I was just gonna say that. I've been pitching that since like I started my page. I'm like, if they just had like a late night show, that would be amazing. And you earlier bringing up stuff like Chelsea Handler and Jimmy Fallon and whatnot, it came to my brain again. I was going to ask you that because I'm like, I always thought like, why not? You guys have all the characters and the people.
I really wanted to do it. I wanted to host it, and I wanted Mean Gene to be my sidekick.
That would have been amazing. Yeah,
that's what I really, really wanted. And we could never really. I mean, we never shot a pilot or anything.
Yeah,
it never got any legs at all. But something like that I would have loved. You know, I had pitched like a couple different like food show ideas of things that I wanted to do, of like some cooking alongside some wrestlers. Trying to get like a podcast kind of up and running, which I mean the pitches for those never really went too far anyways. But even just like outside of Unfiltered, trying to like expand that show, make that into something else. I mean, interview shows are always something that I love to do. I love being able to just like chat with people and hang out. But yeah, Tuesday Night Titans was like
that would have been amazing.
That I really wanted to do.
I just always thought that would be like, because even the old Tuesday Night Titans, I'm like, it was such a cool way to showcase the wrestlers, like, and to develop their characters bigger and just let them like do over the top stuff. And then watching stuff like Jimmy Fallon and stuff, I'm like, yeah, you can have them play games, or you could have like the funny interviews, and I'm like, you could build storylines off. Like, why wouldn't they bring it back? But
I know
it's cool to know that people are there too. That'd be amazing if they do.
But yeah, I know it was something that I really wanted to do. It was just a fun show. It was a cool show. And while they're like doing new content for the network, I was like, let's do it. But I don't know, maybe somewhere down the line.
Maybe for anyone that hasn't though, like go check out the Unfiltered show that's on the network still, because I really enjoyed those interviews too, and they were great.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, that's sort of what I feel like I get to do now with Oral Sessions. Is but in the longer form, which is what I wanted for Unfiltered. Having like a 15-minute interview when you know you can sit and talk to someone for an hour for however long, and like that's what I love about doing podcasts too, is like there's not that perfection. We're not editing. It's just like that's the show, we're hanging out. I like that long form. Really, it's really cool.
So let's talk about the podcast. So let's talk about the stuff you're doing now with Oral Sessions. First things first, the name. How did you come up with the name?
So I really, truly was not like, ooh, sexual innuendo. That was like not in my mind. But what I knew I wanted it to be was just like conversations. I was like, all it is conversations. There's no bells, there's no whistles, there's no gimmicks. It's just a conversation with somebody about who they are, where they come from, their background, their aspirations, like just interesting people carving their own path, whatever. So as I was thinking about that, I'm like, I don't know what goes with like a conversation. Conversation comes from your mouth. Oral. And I was like thinking of like, you take like an oral test or whatever. Like you hear the word, I had to do an oral test for my citizenship. I didn't know 100%. Meant blowjobs.
Yeah.
But of course, whatever. It's funny. It's still funny.
I think it catches people's attention because it is like a double entendre. Like it is funny, but it's also, but then it's like it's not that either. So it's like it was a good way to catch people's attention. I've enjoyed it so far, to be honest. Like the episode with Jon was great. Obviously, the episode Punk was great, and then I'm cool with Emilio too. So you guys doing the Q&A and getting to hear Emilio was awesome. Like shout out to Emilio, he's the man. But I really enjoy it. No, and like for people that haven't listened to, like, there's some stuff I was listening to, I'm like, oh, like things are like coming out to me, like I'm like, I understand that, like I kind of relate to it. Like when you and Punk start talking about imposter syndrome, I'm like, oh, that's a thing. Like, oh, because I think I've been there before, where people think I can do something, or I am doing something because they look at my following or whatnot, and then I just pretend to do it because like that's what they expect. I can do it. Like I'll just throw myself out there. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it. I'll do an interview. Like if you
that's half the battle, right? You just start doing it, press record, and figure the rest out.
Go watch my interview with Seamus on my YouTube channel from back in the day, and I had no idea what I was doing with my hands. Like they just kept moving.
I still, when I do interviews, like I feel like I prepare for them, but then I also just I don't know what I'm doing either. I just figure it out and ask questions and have conversations.
I mean, I prepared for this one. Now I'm here and I'm like, okay, let's just roll with it. We'll see where it goes.
Like, and that's the best way to do it too. It's like, sometimes you want to like, or, I do interviews with other people and it's very rigid in the sense of like, well, I know I'm going to ask this and then this and then this, as opposed to like, just listen to what the conversation is and just, navigate it that way. It makes it much easier.
I'm sure now that like, obviously in WWE, you were like tied to like doing your interviews backstage and stuff, and it was very scripted and not. The podcast must be like a breath of fresh air because you just get to go with it, right? With full freedom.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, it's nice to not be in like wrestler speak, you know, like not having to like say the terms and whatever. Like, it's nice to just talk and just to like shoot the shit, and there's no agenda behind it. It's just something that I enjoy doing.
Because I did have some like fan questions of people asking like, oh, ask her what it's like, to be an aspiring broadcaster. Like, how does she get ready for interviews and stuff? And I'm like, I don't know if she's gonna like. Do you consider yourself like a broadcaster?
Honestly, I don't.
That's what because I feel like I've heard you say that before.
Like, I understand that I am.
Yeah.
But I just I don't feel like I prepare the way that a broadcaster does or something. I don't know. I guess like. Depends. Like when I would do like kickoff shows and stuff for WWE, that made me feel like maybe a little more broadcastery because I really like had to like write intros and outros, and we've had graphics that would come up that I would have to like, I would pre-write those and like put certain things together. But no, I don't. I mean, what really is the difference between like, I always say I'm like a TV host, as opposed to a broadcaster. Because in my head, a broadcaster is like sitting behind a desk doing Sports Center, where a TV host is a Jimmy Fallon. Is Jimmy Fallon a broadcaster? I want to be more like that, but I'm not him. I would love to be more like him, but that's always what I keep in my head.
Yeah, it's just a weird. I was like, because I'm like, when they ask me this question, I'm like, I don't know if she'll have an answer for that, because I don't know if she feels like she's a broadcaster, or like, how do you prepare to like go out there? I'm like, I think everyone's is different. That's like, how do you prepare to like just put yourself out there and like turn it on when you need to turn it on? Like,
I mean, I've never really thought about that. That's just always been like part of what I do, I guess. I mean, part of what anyone does. It's like, and again, it's to a certain degree. I mean, I can do like a pumped up version of myself, but ultimately what people see on TV of me is so similar to what I'm like in real life anyway. So it's really not that big of a difference for me. It's more so, I guess, like a filter comes on in the sense of like, hey, maybe you don't swear so much, or like pay attention to what you're saying. It's not like I'm just in my living room shooting.
Yeah, you can't fully just be yourself. You have to be somewhat professional. That's the only thing that changes. Yeah,
to a degree. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge over preparer as well. Like when it comes to certain things, like if I'm doing any show, I will be over prepared, but also willing to throw all of my preparation out if I don't need it. Like I like to have the preparation done, hope that my brain has stored as much of the information as it needs, and then the rest of it is what it is.
No, 100%. How did the cooking book come up? When did you decide you wanted to write a cookbook? Like, I do remember I was following on Instagram as you left the WWE. There was more you cooking on your Instagram stories and making meals, and I was following along. You made butter chicken one time. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. And then next thing you know, Renee's dropping a cookbook.
The chicken recipe came from Ali's wife.
Oh, did it? That's awesome.
So I've just always loved cooking. I've always loved cooking, and I love cookbooks. I love buying cookbooks. I love flipping through them. There's just something like comforting about it. And it's like reading the recipes, looking at the photos, the time and effort that goes into them. Like, I just really appreciate cookbooks so
Hmm.
much. And the time that I spend in the kitchen is something that I really value. So I was like, hell, I want to do one. Like, it was just something I wanted to do. It was like bucket list kind of thing of like, will someone let me write a cookbook? Can I
Yeah.
pull that off? And then once a publisher jumped on board and they're like, okay, let's do it. And it was not easy. I mean, trying to make that connection when they're like, wait, you talk about wrestling and you're in like
Yeah.
the WWE world, but you want to do a cookbook, but it's not all like healthy recipes. Like it really kind of threw people for a loop. And then working with Postal Press, who's the publisher for my cookbook, they were so cool and like really just letting me figure it out. Like I wrote the whole thing. I tested all the recipes a million different times. It was just so refreshing to me to be able to write in my own voice. I've not been able to do that in so long.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's like when you're in WWE, you speak in a different vernacular. You're putting on a bit of a different version of yourself. Where this was just like a version of me in my house cooking. I'm drinking. I'm swearing. I'm playing music. My dogs are around. My husband's around. It's just like that. Like it's like that real, authentic version of me. And I think that really comes through in the writing of the book. So yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so proud of this book. I just a couple days ago got to see like the PDF version of what the book's
Oh,
going to
wow.
look like. It looks
Yeah.
great. I'm so happy with the way that it all turned out. It's just like I made the book that I want to read.
How'd you come up with the name?
That was hard. Coming up with the name was really difficult. So we had like bounced off. My initial name that I had for it was Holy Shit, That's Good.
Yeah.
But then we ended up not going with that because I guess it's harder to get books like that on shelves in places like Target and Walmart if they're swearing
Fair
on the
enough.
front.
Yeah.
Which I get. So we had come up with a couple different ones, and the publisher actually threw Messy in the Kitchen at me because that was sort of the thing is like roll up the sleeves. There's nothing fancy really about this book. But I really wanted the subtitle because I felt like the subtitle really kind of tied it all together as long as it is.
Yeah.
But it just made it like, it just seemed more fun to me to like make it this like ridiculous.
It had to be fully you. So if that's what you wanted,
Yeah.
that's what it had to be.
Yeah.
So anyone that's listening, if you want to buy this cookbook, it's available for pre-order on Amazon.
Yeah.
Messy in the Kitchen and by Renee Paquette. But
Yeah,
I will
look
say
it up.
this: I want to ask you this really quickly because I grew up loving to cook too. Like I was one of those kids. I'm the youngest of three, so in a sense, I guess I hung out with my mom more than my other two siblings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning, I watched a lot of the Food Network and Emerald and the whole BAM and situations. So
Bam.
when I was a little kid, I actually used to cook a lot and stuff. And I went through a phase. I'm like, maybe I want to be a chef when I grow up, or maybe I want to own a restaurant. And then,
Yeah.
I realized a few things such as like owning a restaurant after watching shows like Hell's Kitchen and Kitchen Nightmares is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then I'm like being a chef. I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to make the same food for random people over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, even when you like waitress a bunch, you're like, oh my God, the food industry can be so gnarly.
So like I think the way that like you liked cooking and then you made it a thing because like I always say like I like cooking but I like to cook when I want to cook and for who I want to cook for and like that's about it. So yes. I think you coming out with a cookbook though is like you got to do that but you still got to do something with cooking and that's really cool.
Yeah, that's really how I felt about it. It's like I feel like I got to like participate in the cooking world in like some degree. I'm hoping that I get to do more with that. I mean, even just having the book come out, like I would love to be able to do something like with Food Network or.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. Would you ever want a cooking show?
Of course, yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, I watch so many cooking shows like everybody else, but like I would love to do that. I feel like combining my love of cooking with like the experience that I have on TV and all that, I think it would be so much fun to do. So hopefully if I like to go on like Twitter and like petition for these things and hope that maybe someone bites. It's not happened yet, but
if not, just like make a video and throw it on YouTube of you making your own cooking show, and then hopefully someone notices and like, yo, this is great. Why not?
I mean, really,
that's what I do. I just do things.
To, right?
Yeah,
yeah, of course. I mean, as we were saying at the beginning, you just got to do stuff and you build it, and they will come.
Yeah, 100%. John's writing a book, by the way. Have you been able to check that out at all?
I have. Yeah, I've been checking a lot of it out. Yeah, because
is he writing it himself? Like he's not using a ghostwriter or anything, is he?
No, he's
writing. Oh wow, that's even harder.
He's so good at that, and I knew he was gonna be because I had said to him before, like years ago, I was like, oh, like if and when you decide to write a book, it's gonna be great. He's such a good storyteller, and he's so just his like way with words. He can be a very eloquent like speaker. His vocabulary always like blows my mind, and the way he like retains information is like, I can't, my brain just doesn't work like that. So it blows my mind when he's like, oh, this happened in this town on this date and this happened, and he remembers stuff so clearly like that. And but yeah, it's cool watching him go through this process as he's figuring out like what this book even is, because it's like not it's not really like an autobiography.
Yeah.
But it's kind of taking on its own life and its own shape. He's
Interesting.
maybe like maybe a quarter, 2/3 of the way through, or wait, that's more than that, a quarter to a half of the way through of writing the book. But yeah, it's cool. Writing a book is so much work, and I like writing a cookbook was a lot of work, just I had to like test every recipe and make sure the measurements were right, and there was like kind of a science behind that. But I was like writing like blurbs aside from writing the instructions, where for him to be like just fully writing a book with all these stories like would make my head spin. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what comes together for him with this book, and I think his fans will be really excited to kind of get a glimpse of what goes on inside his head. He's someone that really keeps to himself so much.
Yeah.
So I think him letting a guard down to write about some stuff will be really cool.
Even in most interviews, he's comes off still very reserved, except the one with you where he was very open. But I think it's because he's really comfortable with you, of course. But
yeah, exactly.
But it'll be really interesting to read. I'm looking forward to that a lot, actually. I obviously, when you were heading out of WWE and you were leaving WWE, I think a lot of people assumed eventually maybe we would see you in AEW. Mm-hmm. In the past, we've seen you get involved somewhat in storylines, like you slapped the hell out of the Miz.
Damn right.
In a feud with Ambrose and Miz at the time. Was there any plans for you to ever show up in AEW? Do you ever plan to go there? Or are you trying to stay out of the wrestling bubble now?
I mean, I wouldn't say I'm trying to stay out of the wrestling world. I think that's something that I'll always be in and around, which I love. I'm definitely not like I'm leaving wrestling, I'm never going to be there. No way. Like it's not that. But I think it is nice for me right now, kind of taking a bit of a breather and figuring out what it is that I actually want to do and how, like where I want to go. If that means doing something in wrestling in some capacity, I'm of course open to the idea. I'm open to the opportunities. But also the world's just so weird right now, and everything's so, as much as things are so closed, I think things are also so open. Just in terms of like nothing's really happening. So when things do start to happen, what's that going to look like? So I'm kind of excited to just see like what that's going to look like, especially like while I'm, working on oral sessions, working on developing that. I've got a couple other things kind of on the go that I'm sort of figuring out. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to leave WWE and then just jump right back into the wrestling world. Because if that was the case, I could have just stayed there doing it.
Yeah.
I had a really good cushy gig with them for a long time. So if that was the case, it's not like I was like dying to go wrestle and they wouldn't let me. It's not that. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see, I guess. I don't know. The mystery remains unsolved.
And if I'm correct, like I think you mentioned in a previous interview, like you ended up in WWE way longer than you expected you were going to.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I never would have thought that it would have become like that huge chunk of my career that I'm like known as a person from wrestling now.
Like you're literally like, and I'm gonna say that, and you can take this how you want, but like I said this in a post one time. I'm like, for a generation of fans, like they could instantly see someone like a Mean Gene and a Sean Mooney, and it represents a specific era of wrestling for them. You can see a Jonathan Coachman or a Todd Grisham, and it represents a specific era of wrestling to them. I'm like, now we have a whole point. Like, there's so much Renee in wrestling, whether it was hosting kickoffs, whether it was backstage interviews. There's so many big major times that fans got into it during the rise of Daniel Bryan. Remember I posted a clip of you doing an interview with Punk and Bryan, which I totally forgot about. I'm like,
I forgot about that too. But as soon as you posted that, I was like, oh, I remember that day very clearly.
Yeah, and I'm like, she's literally been there for all of this, and it's like, you're gonna be that person for a generation of fans that is like, you're in a sense not like, I don't want to like make just in a disrespect, but like you're the Mean Gene to them or someone. Like you're that person.
Thank you.
And it's probably weird for you like to like I don't know about that, but it is like there's gonna be a generation of
I
fans that
love
look at you that way.
Gene so much. I mean, I love Gene in like a respect way
Yeah.
before I knew him, to be like, oh shit, that's Mean Gene Okerlund. He's amazing. But the friendship that I was able to develop with him, that when somebody says that to me, it means so much more to me in that sense, just knowing the man that he was and the legacy that he left behind. So that, I mean, I think of it more in that sense rather than like his like career accomplishments, I guess. I think it's more so just like the way that he was able to resonate with people and made people like I think that there's sort of like that similarity in the sense of like he was who you thought he was. There was no real difference between the Gene on camera versus off camera, and I think that is such a token of how good he was.
And similar to Gene, like he had great chemistry with a lot of wrestlers, like obviously the man promos. And then I don't know if you realized it, but like I'm like, you did too in a sense. Like when you're doing Talking Smack with Brian, it was great. Or if you were up there with Kevin Owens, I'm like, people are gonna remember those promos and moments. So I just want to say like, kudos to you. Like you're gonna be remembered a part of the WWE and like that person for years to come. And that's something to be super proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I you know what, really when I look back at my time at WWE, it's like it was a great time. I had such a great run, and there are so many moments. Like when people ask me like, oh, what was your favorite thing? It's like, shit, over the time I was there, I got to do so many cool things. It's kind of hard to narrow it all down, but yeah, it was a hell of a run, kid.
So
while I'm on here, I keep seeing myself, and I realized I tweeted yesterday that my bulldog headbutted me, and I can like see it now.
Oh, was it hard?
I was getting a bit of a black eye, and I'm like, shit, am I?
Well, hopefully not. That wouldn't. You can make up a cool story from that, though. Don't worry about it. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, the pregnant lady got in a fight."
Oh my god! I know. I was so mad too. I like got up in the morning to take them outside, and I take the collar off at night. So I bent down to pick it up, and he jumped off the bed the same time I bent down. He just like smoked me in the face with his giant head.
So that doesn't sound pleasant at all.
No,
not the best way to start your morning.
There's a lot of cursing.
2 more questions and I'll let you go. One question is just something that's been in my mind for like a really long time because I've been this Instagram guy since like 2014. And from the fan perspective, since I'm very close to the fans and I know what they're saying and doing all the time because I'm like with them.
Man of the people.
Man of the people, really am. When you first started dating Jon, how many weird girls do you get that were like super upset at you? Because I remember being the Wrestling Classic and just going through my feed and talking, and the people that followed me, like there was girls that were like really loved Jon, and they were like genuinely like, it was weird for me to like, because I've always been older. Like when I started my page, I was already 23, so like I was past that like teenage phase. But I was like, that's so crazy. Because even for me, like social media is like something I didn't have as a kid or growing up. Like I wasn't able to tweet or go on Instagram. Like I played cops and robbers and street hockey outside, and we got kicked off the video games if our parents wanted to watch TV. So like different times. But now like people can have these obsessions and it's just out there to the world to see.
It's weird. It is weird. And like, I mean, I get it. I get it to a sense of like, you know, when you're like a kid and you're really into someone, it is what it is. I get that. But it can turn into this like really sort of like scary situation. And that, I mean, that kind of like rocked my world because I wasn't prepared for that. I was like, oh my God, I was just getting like piled on with hate. And I think the thing that really like, I know like wrestling, Twitter and like fandom can be a little bit like that. But when I had like other wrestlers coming up to me being like, people fucking hate you because you're with Jon. And I was like, whoa, like for other people to like really notice it as well. When I know that we all kind of get piled on with certain things here and there. But, you know, it's funny. I was talking to Big E on my podcast and he was talking about like the quality filters that you can put on like Twitter and stuff. So like, I really don't, either people are over it because we've been together for like 7
I think they are now. I don't see it that much
anymore.
For
a while. We're married. I got a kid on the way.
People but I just remember back then it was like people like there was girls on social media that were like mad.
I still get it sometimes. So like just recently, I saw someone saying like that I like faked my pregnancy and stuff. Like the craziest things. It's just nuts.
I've always was curious. I'm like, I wonder how she felt about that because I know I've
nuts.
been
how
fortunate
do you
enough
for something like that. You're like, you're not even mad at me for something. I mean, I guess for something that I did, but like, yeah, like just someone hating me for no reason. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear.
Oh wow! Very last question, and I'll let you go after this. I'm a big record collector.
Talking shit about your fans, talking shit about me. Rude. Can you turn off your podcast so I can finish this interview? Can you turn that down so I can finish this?
We have a run-in. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're almost done. We're on the last question. Last question, then we'll plug your stuff and I'll let you go. Cool. Very last question. Just like I'm other than wrestling, and I think a lot of people just know me for like in wrestling because the wrestling classic and whatnot. But for people that really follow the page and watch my stories and stuff, know I'm like a huge music buff. And the one thing that I love that you do is like you're always sharing your vinyls and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What are like some of your favorites? Name like 4 that you probably wouldn't be able to live without. For anyone that's listening to some music buff,
I would say my favorites, if I had to like pick a couple tops, I would say Neil Young on the Beach, 100%. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. I've always been trying to track it down and I've not had any success yet. So if anyone that's watching this finds it, I would love to find John Frusciante's Shadows Collide with People. Is that what it's called?
Sweet.
It's so good. Gosh, what else? Like special. I really love Jack White's what the hell is it called? It was the one that he released that had like the whole vinyl's really cool.
Yeah.
There's like secret tracks on there, and there's like acoustic versions on there, and there's
That's awesome.
A little hologram that spins above the top. I can't think of the name of what that album's called, right? It's not starts with what's that album called? Do you remember? That Jack White album that has like the hologram on it? Lazaretto.
Oh, sweet.
That's awesome. His brain's better than mine. He's
on it, just like that. I will say though, okay, so I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you doing this. I told you off the air, like this was me getting back in the groove. So
yeah,
I was trying to find myself again, and I was like, you know what? I'm down to interview Renee because every time we've had the pleasure of talking, like she's good vibes. Like I feel like it wouldn't be that like nerve wracking because like you're good at this.
It was a lot of fun. You were great.
Thank you very much. Everyone that's listening to this, you guys go check out Oral Sessions wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else. Check out her cookbook that you can buy on Amazon and everything as well. And I think that's it. I really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
Hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy your time in LA. Thank you.
Some of that fresh air for me.
One last question, just because I heard you talk about it in the other interviews. Now that we've had a full conversation for about an hour, do I have this Canadian accent that people talk about, especially this West Coast Vancouver one? Okay, I did want to check because I heard you guys talking like there's a special one in the West Coast, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I have that.
Well,
wonder if I have that West Coast Canadian accent.
You have it in the sense that like I can hear it.
Yeah,
I'm like familiar with what that specific sound is. But if someone did not know, they would like know.
Oh, sweet.
I don't even know how to describe it because it's like I feel like the Eastern Canadian accent is like quite goofy. Where the West Coast one, it has like sort of like I feel like it's like the version of like a California accent. There's like
we get that you have like a laid back voice, and I'm like I don't know what that is, but okay. Yeah.
No,
sweet
it's a good one. I usually try to like emulate it because my cousin that lives in LA, it's from BC. Her whole family talks like that, and I always thought they sounded cooler than we did.
Sweet. I just wanted to make sure I didn't have this Canadian accent that's getting headlines these days. But other than that, thank you. Enjoy your time in LA.
For sure.
And I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye. Well then, that was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Renee Young, and I will see you guys soon for maybe another casual conversation.
It's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.